Greetings everyone. Welcome to today's lecture on development of education, science and technology in independent India. Education, science and technology occupy a very important role in the making of any nation, and India has been no exception to this. However, almost 200 years of colonial rule created a lot of gaps in this sector. So therefore, after independence, great attention and importance had to be paid to these neglected sectors. The constitutional provisions in elementary education speak a lot about the efforts that were being made. The 42nd Amendment to the Constitution in 1976 had put education in the concurrent list and empowered the Indian Parliament with the authority to legislate on education concurrently with the states. The 73rd and 74th Amendment to the Constitution provided for decentralization of school education and also entrusted primary education to PRIs, that is Panchayati Raj institutions, and urban area committees, so that the participatory and interactive management for primary education could be evolved. The central government on 28th July 1997 introduced 83rd Constitutional Amendment in Rajya Sabha, proposing to make elementary education as the fundamental right of the child, as even after several decades of independence, elementary education still had a lot to achieve. The Constitution of India was amended in 2002 to make elementary education a justiciable fundamental right. If we speak about the National Policy on Education of 1968, then great efforts were made for early fulfillment of the directive principles under Article 45. It reiterated the resolve that by 1995 all children will be provided free and compulsory education up to 14 years of age. The central government on 28th July 1997 thereby introduced 83rd Constitutional Amendment proposing to make elementary education as the fundamental right of the child, because this still had not been achieved after several decades of independence. Let us now briefly discuss different approaches and strategies that had been followed in the sector of education after independence. So, if we talk about the first plan from 1951 to 56, the idea was to provide educational facilities to at least 60% of students, especially of the school going age within the age group of 6 to 14 years. Then the second plan from 1956 to 61 laid emphasis on linking education with economic development, because after independence there was a great problem of unemployment that had to be tackled. This policy also advocated for expansion of basic and elementary education. The third plan from 1961 to 66 largely laid emphasis on the provision for universal elementary education for children in the age group of 6 to 14, and also special emphasis on education of girls, as well as to reduce the disparities that existed in the level of education of boys and girls. The annual plan from 1966 to 69 continued with these only parameters. Thereafter, we see that the educational plan in the fourth 5-year plan were related to social and economic objectives of the country. It was a prospective plan based on the needs of human resources, social demand and the availability of financial, material and human resources in the country at that time. Then so therefore, what we see that the fourth plan from 1969 to 1974 was clearly geared to meet the economic objects of the country. The fifth plan from 1974 to 79 gave very high priority again to elementary education and also for additional enrollment in the schools. There was also provision for curricular orientation, work experience and strengthening the educational institutions for teachers. Then the annual plans from 1979 to 1980 continued with the same pattern. The sixth plan from 1980 to 85 gave highest priority to universalization of elementary education, which was to continue as a part of basic needs program, and to achieve the idea also was to achieve universal primary education by next 5 years. And how was this going to be achieved? For this there was an intensification in the uses of existing facilities by adjusting the school hours, which should not be more than 3 hours a day according to local conditions. Also provision of new facilities which should be economically viable also as well as educationally relevant. Also there was lot of promotion of non-formal system of learning. Several schemes that were taken up in the course of several plan periods were, for example, accepting the principle of average attendance to overcome wastage and stagnation. So therefore, the very idea that there should be 100% attendance for a student to be promoted to the next class was given up, and average attendance also was considered as sufficient. Also ensuring that a school is available to a child within 1.5 kilometers in town and within 6 kilometers in rural areas. Lot of emphasis was laid on compulsory enrollment. Then also to bring about the expansion of part-time informal education as well as eradication of regional imbalances. Then the seventh plan from 1985 to 90 again gave highest priority to universal elementary education that had to be achieved by 1990. Now the emphasis shifted from mere enrollment to retention as well as to attainment of basic factors of learning. So it was not merely sufficient to enroll a student, but also to ensure that the same student learnt the basic essentials that were supposed to be part of elementary education. And again these objectives were to be achieved both through formal as well as non-formal methods, especially focusing on the needs of girls and of children belonging to economically and socially weaker sections. Then the eighth plan from 1992 to 97 started giving priority to universalization of free and compulsory education up to the age of 14, and also an attempt to improve the retention and achievement of children of the relevant age groups. Again the target population had to be especially from the marginalized sections of society. A national program of midday meals was started from August 1995 to promote access, retention and nutritional care of students enrolled in primary schools. Now this gave a huge boost to enrollment, especially in poor families where children were not even able to get 2 square meals a day. Also, there was emphasis on improvement in the quality of schooling, and achievement levels of children enrolled in schools was attempted through the introduction of minimum levels of learning as well as enhancement of infrastructure facilities. So therefore, we see that the approaches and strategies showed lot of continuity as well as change. Then the ninth plan from 1997 to 2002 outlined that there had to be a commitment to a total eradication of illiteracy and also to increase both the governmental as well as non-governmental spending on education up to 6% of GDP. Also, the aim was to provide education for all and to implement the constitutional provision of making primary education free and compulsory up to 5th standard. The aim was earmarked as access to and opportunity of educational standards up to the school learning stage. There was an insistence also on enhancing the quality of education at all levels, whether it was primary level or secondary or university level education. The overall strategy that was devised was to ensure that primary education continued as a universal basic service, and the Supreme Court judgment declaring education to be a fundamental right for children up to 14 years also was path breaking. There was a need to operationalize programs through PRIs as well as through urban local bodies. There were several issues that were highlighted in the ninth plan, that was for example, backlog that was existing of a large number of unenrolled children, that is those children who had never gone to schools, majority of them being girls, then a very high dropout rate, and also existence of huge interstate disparities. So there were states with a very good educational facilities as well as achievements, whereas there were states which did not show that much a remarkable achievement. There were also a large number of habitations, still almost 16%, that were not served by primary schools within a distance of 1 kilometer. Also, there was lack of physical infrastructures like toilet facilities for girls, safe drinking water facilities in schools, or teaching learning equipment. So, all these issues were raised in the ninth plan. And then the 10th plan from 2002 to 2007 devised approaches to achieve the goal of universal elementary education in the years to come, and also to deal with all the gap areas that had existed. So basically, there were some concerns that were highlighted, that is the national resolve to provide free and compulsory education of satisfactory quality to all the children up to the age of 14 years. Then the political commitment to make the right to elementary education a fundamental right, and also to enforce it through essential statutory measures. And then the third important objective was enactment of 73rd and 74th constitutional amendment, which had set the stage for greater decentralization and significantly enhanced role for local bodies, community organizations as well as voluntary agencies in the efforts towards universal elementary education, a dream that had still not been achieved. When we talk about universal access, what does it mean? It basically means that all children in the age groups from 6 to 11 and 11 to 14 should have access to primary schools, upper primary schools, or their alternatives within the walking distance of 1 kilometer in case of primary schools and 3 kilometers in case of upper primary schools. So, with all these aims and objectives, a universal access to schooling became a major issue. Also, universal access to early childhood care and education centers for all children of age group 3 to 6 years was also made a target. There was a need that was a need based expansion of primary education facilities that was envisaged, especially for the disadvantaged sections of society. So, it was decided that there should be one upper primary school for every 2 primary schools within a radius. When we talk about universal enrollment, it means enrollment of all children in schools or other alternatives by 2003. All children had to complete 5 years of primary schooling by 2007 and complete 8 years of schooling by 2010. So, these were some targets that were set. Another very important target was that of universal retention, because of the problem of wastage and stagnation. So, reducing overall the rate of dropout, because children without completing their schooling would drop out of the schools, and this was not only a complete wastage of the resources of the state, but also a huge loss for the child as well as for the families. Then another very essential goal that was earmarked was that of equity, that is bridging all gender and social gaps in enrollment, retention and learning achievement in primary cycle by 2007, and also the same kind of bridging of the gap had to be done in upper primary cycle also by 2007. So, how was this to be achieved? This could be achieved through special interventions and strategies to include girls, SC/ST children, working children, children with special needs, urban deprived children, street children, children from minority groups, children living below poverty line, migrant children, and also children in hardest to reach groups. Now, if we talk about the strategies that were devised in the 10th plan, they were clearly diverse strategies like convergence, then a large number of institutional reforms, community empowerment, especially local community empowerment, then institutional capacity building, as well as community based monitoring. Some other strategies that were devised were uh, special mention of children from minority groups, giving lot of importance to children belonging to working children category, then SCs and STs, as well as education of girls and especially adolescent girls. So, with all this special emphasis, there was bound to be some achievement that happened in the 10th plan. So, there was an increase in enrollment at the primary stage in states like Jharkhand and even in Jammu and Kashmir, in UP and Madhya Pradesh. And in case of upper primary, there was huge increase again in Jharkhand, Uttar Pradesh, Jammu and Kashmir and Arunachal Pradesh. In terms of enrollment, we can say that GER in primary increased from 96.3% in 2001 to 107.8% in 2004. Then GER in upper primary increased from 60.2% in 2001 to 69% in 2004. Out of school children also decreased from almost 32 million in 2001 to 7.1 million in 2005. Now this was a huge achievement because, as I just mentioned, that the problem of dropout and stagnation had remained throughout all these decades. So finally now this dropout rate had begun to decline. Also, number of districts having out of school children of more than 50,000 each was reduced from 48 to 29. In enrollment also, we see that the dropout rate at primary level decreased from 39% in 2001 to 29% in 2004, and the dropout rate at elementary level however continued to remain high. There was also reduction in gender gap and also reduction in social category gap. Now again there were several issues that were highlighted in elementary education in the 11th plan. The Constitution of India was amended in 2002 to make elementary education a justiciable fundamental right. 7.1 million children being out of school and over 50% dropping out at elementary level was still a very serious matter of concern. So therefore, Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan was launched and it had to be reoriented to meet the challenges of equity, retention and high quality education. Thank you.